My name is Armin Devroy. I'm 36 years old. Once upon a time, I was the rising star in a boutique architecture firm in San Francisco. Award-winning designs, TEDx talks, a beautiful loft, and a marriage people described as goals. Whatever that means. That was 3 years ago. Now I live alone in a rented cottage on the Oregon coast, where the fog rolls in like it's trying to cover everything I've done. The wind speaks more than I do these days. I haven't drawn a blueprint in 11 months. My inbox is a graveyard of unread messages. And my wedding ring? It sits in the back of my sock drawer, wrapped in an old train ticket from Prague, the last trip we ever took together before everything fell apart. Then came the phone call. It was 6:07 a.m. when my phone rang. I remember the exact time because I'd just made coffee and burned my tongue on the first sip. The name on the screen startled me. Kabir Hawaii. My older brother. The kind of man who wears white linen unironically, runs a beachfront hotel in Maui, and thinks pineapple belongs on pizza. We hadn't spoken in nearly 8 months. Not since the family Zoom call, where I forgot to show up. I hesitated before answering. But something in me said, "Pick up." "Hey," I said, my voice still cracked with sleep. There was a pause. Then Kabir's breezy voice. "Armin." Finally. "I was starting to think you'd changed your number." I rubbed my forehead. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Listen, I just had this couple here, newlyweds, and they reminded me of you and Nara. Made me wonder, where is your wife, by the way?" He said it like it was nothing. Like it hadn't been the one question I'd been running from for 2 whole years. "Where is your wife?" I looked out the window. The ocean was gray, restless, indifferent. I took a deep breath. And I said, "She's," but the rest never came out. Because how do you finish a sentence like that? She's gone. She left. She disappeared into a part of herself I could never reach. How do you explain a woman like Nara? I heard Kabir's voice again, softer this time. "Hey, you okay?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She's not here." Another pause. "Right. I figured something was off. You didn't post on your anniversary. Not that I stalk you or anything." I forced a dry laugh. "We're not together anymore." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Because Nara didn't just leave me. She vanished. One morning she kissed my cheek, said she was going to the art supply store, and never came back. No goodbye note. No message. Just silence. Like the sea swallowed her whole. That day, I sat by the window until the sky turned black. I didn't call the police. I didn't call her friends. I just sat there, holding her favorite mug. The one with the chipped rim and a faded print of Van Gogh's Starry Night. Maybe I believed she'd walk back through the door. Maybe I thought this was just another one of her silences. She was like that, intense, passionate, but often retreating into her own world. A world I never fully understood. I still don't know why I said she's not here, instead of telling Kabir the whole story. Maybe I was ashamed. Maybe I still believed she'd call. Or maybe part of me wasn't ready to admit that I lost her long before she disappeared. I hung up the call with Kabir and stared at my phone. The screen dimmed to black, and in that reflection, I saw a man I barely recognized. I whispered it aloud this time. "She's not here." And for the first time in months, I meant it. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have possibly known, was that the truth about where Nara really was would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, about memory, and about myself. And that her silence was never accidental. You never really notice the moment something begins to rot. Not when it's beautiful. Not when it's hers. Not when you're falling in love. 5 years ago, I met Nara on the 3rd floor of an art gallery in downtown San Francisco. It was a Thursday. It was raining. Not the kind of cold, sharp rain that soaks your socks and your soul, but the kind that made you want to hold a stranger's hand just to stay warm. The gallery was hosting a design event. Form and function, when architecture meets textile. I was invited as one of the guest panelists. She was late. I remember that clearly. She slipped into the back row mid-panel, hair wet, cheeks flushed, and the loudest thing about her was her silence. She didn't take notes. She didn't nod along. She just stared at the stage with eyes like dusk, somewhere between gold and storm. Later that evening, I found her standing in front of a model I had designed years ago. A twisted glass and concrete facade meant to represent the fragility of permanence. Most people admired the structure for its ambition. Nara tilted her head and said, "Looks like it's holding its breath." I laughed. "That's actually the point." "I know," she said. "That's why I came back to look at it again." She told me she was a textile artist, specialized in natural dyes and traditional block printing. Said she'd studied in Jaipur before moving to Oakland. We argued for 30 minutes about structure versus flow, permanence versus impermanence, and somehow ended up at a taco truck sharing dinner under an awning while thunder cracked behind us. By the end of the night, she asked if I believed in déjà vu. "Not really," I replied. "I do," she smiled. "And I'm pretty sure I've met you before. Maybe in a different life. Maybe I broke your heart then." I remember laughing. I had no idea how right she was. The first year with Nara felt like living inside a poem. We were reckless with time, slept in on weekdays, went dancing on Mondays, drank wine out of ceramic mugs, slow-cooked dinners together, and forgot half the ingredients. We'd walk barefoot on the balcony. She'd sketch fabric patterns while I drew impossible skylines on paper napkins. We were both broke, tired, overworked, but happy. Wildly, foolishly happy. And it wasn't just the good days. She held me through my panic attacks when a client fired me without reason. I stood by her side when her exhibition barely sold one piece. I still remember the way she cried when she thought she had failed, and the way she looked up at me, mascara smudged and honest, and whispered, "Tell me I'm not nothing." "You're not," I said, kissing her forehead. "You're the story the sky keeps trying to tell every night." We got married the following winter. It was a small wedding, just 30 people, on a rooftop in Sonoma, surrounded by fairy lights and fog. I remember her sari, off-white, with tiny indigo flowers she printed herself. I remember the way she looked at me during our vows, like she was both terrified and home. That night she told me, "If I ever run, don't follow. Just wait. I'll always come back." I should have listened. Marriage wasn't hard at first. It was just full of noise, deadlines, travel, commissions, clients, studio visits, book launches. My career took off. More interviews, more awards, more speaking events. Hers didn't. She was passionate, talented, but slow. And the world doesn't reward slow art. We started drifting, but not like lovers turning cold. More like two continents that had once been one land, now separated by a sea of unspoken things. I'd get home late. She'd already be asleep. I'd try to talk. She'd be somewhere else, in her head, in her fears, in her empty sketchbooks. One night I came home and found her crying in the bathtub, holding a fabric swatch she'd bled over with a sewing needle. She looked up and said, "I don't think I'm real anymore." I knelt beside her and said, "You're the only real thing left." But she didn't believe me. And maybe I didn't either. If I could go back to that year, that season before the fall, I wouldn't change the arguments or the missed calls or the broken plates. I'd change the silences. Because silence, between two people who once heard everything in each other, is not peace. It's a funeral with no music. I didn't know it yet, but we were standing at the edge of something. And we'd both already taken a step off the ledge. The fall had begun. We just didn't feel the wind yet. People think heartbreak arrives like an earthquake, sudden, violent, complete. But that's not how it happened to us. With Nara and me, it was erosion. It started with a moment I barely noticed. The first time I finished dinner before she got home and didn't wait. The first time she didn't ask how my day was. The first weekend we both stayed home and barely spoke. A silent kind of slipping. I remember a night, maybe a year into our marriage. We were lying in bed, facing opposite directions, both pretending to scroll through something important. She turned her screen brightness down. I did the same. That night we didn't even say goodnight. That was the first crack. It didn't shatter us, but it split something open, a tiny fracture, barely there. Invisible, but permanent. By our third year, we had begun speaking different emotional languages. I spoke in tasks, goals, and timelines. I built us a 5-year financial plan, color-coded and shared via Google Sheets. She spoke in pauses, long stares, and half-finished sketches. She left notes under my coffee mug with words like, "Are we okay?" written in brush lettering, as if beauty could cushion the question. One morning, I found her standing on the balcony in her robe, barefoot, holding a cold cup of tea. She didn't look at me when I said good morning, just said, "Do you ever feel like we're stuck in a movie neither of us auditioned for?" I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. That became a pattern. The name Vihan appeared first in passing. She mentioned him casually, an old friend from her textile design program. They were working on a sustainability initiative. I nodded, asked nothing. Later that night, I saw her texting him. No big deal. Until it was. The moment I really noticed something had shifted was in December. We were invited to a holiday party. Big one. My firm's senior partners would be there. She'd always come to these events, smiling, stunning, stealing all the attention without trying. This time she didn't come. Said she had a migraine. I left her ginger tea and aspirin on the nightstand, kissed her forehead, and went anyway. At the party my phone buzzed. "Naira, feeling better. Going to step out for some fresh air. Don't worry, I'll be fine." Fresh air? At 9:42 p.m.? Something about it made my stomach twist. But I said nothing. Because I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. Because I still believed we were okay. In the following weeks, she became more withdrawn, yet more alive. Her eyes lit up again. She started dancing to music while cooking. She sang in the shower. She even started sleeping better. Just not beside me. It was like someone had reminded her what joy felt like. And it wasn't me. Then one evening, I opened her sketchbook by accident. I'd thought it was my portfolio folder. Inside, I saw pages of indigo and charcoal. Intricate patterns, some familiar, others haunting. But what gutted me were the portraits. Sketches of her own face. Dozens. Some joyful. Some hollow. And one of me. Drawn in black ink, no color. I looked tired. Distant. A heavy fog around my outline. She had scribbled across the bottom. "He doesn't see me anymore." I sat there with the sketch in my lap and realized something devastating. I didn't know how long I'd been asleep inside my own life. A week later, she left her phone on the table while she showered. It buzzed once. I didn't mean to look. But I did. "Vihan. Same place tomorrow? I've missed you." My heart sank into itself like wet concrete. But I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront her that night. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the floor of our living room, and listened to the old vinyl record we bought on our honeymoon. The one she used to dance to in the kitchen. She came out of the shower and asked, "You okay?" I looked up at her, the woman I married, the woman who now felt like a guest in my home. And I said, "Yeah, just remembering something." There's a moment, just before you ask the question you can't take back, where your entire life holds its breath. You already know the answer. Your bones know. Your breath knows. But you ask anyway, because silence is starting to kill you more than the truth ever could. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday night. We hadn't spoken much that week. Naira had started keeping longer hours in her studio, often not coming home until past midnight. She said she was in the zone. I said nothing. I was afraid of what I might hear if I said too much. But that night, something inside me cracked. She walked in around 12:30 a.m., hair tied up messily, fingers stained blue with dye, smelling faintly of turmeric and eucalyptus. She looked beautiful and distant, like someone else's memory. She smiled at me and said, "You're still up?" I nodded. I was experimenting with indigo again. Didn't notice the time. I watched her kick off her shoes and walk barefoot toward the kitchen. She poured water, humming something I didn't recognize. And I sat there silent, until I couldn't anymore. "Naira." She stopped mid-sip. I stood up, my voice steady but hollow. "Are you seeing him?" The words dropped between us like a plate shattering on tile. Her hand trembled slightly, the glass barely clinking as she set it down. "Armin," she whispered. "Don't." "Don't what?" I asked. "Don't ask? Don't know? Don't notice that my wife hasn't looked me in the eyes in months." She turned around slowly. Her eyes weren't wide with guilt. They were heavy. like she'd been carrying this moment far longer than I had. You think I'm cheating on you? I think, I said carefully, that you've already left me. You just haven't moved out yet. The room grew unbearably quiet. Then Nara exhaled, long and painful. I'm not sleeping with Vihan. But you love him. She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I sat down on the couch, and she remained standing across from me. The island of our kitchen between us like a wall we both built, brick by careful brick. I didn't plan this, she said. I didn't wake up one day and say, let me drift away from my husband. I tried, Armin. I tried so hard to stay in this. But I've been screaming in my own head for years, and you never once turned around. You stopped talking to me. Because you stopped listening. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cruel. She was broken. And I realized something terrifying. This woman, this radiant, soulful woman, had been shrinking next to me. And I was too distracted building our future to notice that the present had slipped out from under us. You could have told me, I said quietly. I did, she replied. So many times. In so many ways. But I think you only understand pain when it's loud. And mine was quiet. We sat in that silence for a long time. She didn't apologize. And I didn't forgive. Because this wasn't a mistake you could smooth over with words. This was grief. Grief for the version of us that might have survived if we hadn't both gone to sleep at the wheel. Before she went to bed, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. Armin, you didn't lose me to another man. You lost me to the space between us that you never tried to cross. Then she walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind her. I sat alone on the couch until sunrise. And for the first time since our wedding night, I realized we might still live in the same apartment. But our marriage was already over. The morning she left was unremarkable. No slammed doors. No suitcase by the entrance. No final kiss with too much meaning. Just a cup of coffee on the table, still warm. And her scarf, draped neatly over the back of the chair, like she was planning to come back. I woke up alone. That wasn't new. She'd taken to sleeping in the guest room, saying my tossing and turning kept her up. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. The sun spilled through the blinds, sharp and gold. Her side of the bed was made. I padded barefoot into the kitchen. No music playing. No incense. No soft hum from her studio. Just the silence of absence. There was a note. But not the kind you're imagining. It didn't say goodbye. Or I'm sorry. Or please don't hate me. It just said, gone to the art store. Back soon. It's strange how those 4 words became the last thing she ever wrote to me. That was 7:42 a.m. By noon, I started to worry. By 3 p.m., I had texted her twice. No response. By nightfall, I had called 5 times. Straight to voicemail. But I still didn't panic. Because denial is a comfortable coat. You wear it until it strangles you. I ordered Thai food for both of us. Left her plate in the oven to keep warm. Fell asleep on the couch waiting for the sound of her keys. It never came. The next day, I checked with her friends. None of them had heard from her. Her phone still off. Her studio, locked undisturbed. By the 3rd day, I went to the police. She's an adult, they said gently. And she left a note. She's not considered missing. But I knew something was wrong. Something deep and cold and ancient inside me just knew. She had vanished like a ghost who finally realized no one could see her. I didn't tell anyone the full truth. Not my brother. Not my colleagues. Not even my mother. I said she went to India for an art residency. I said she needed space. I said we were working things out long distance. I said everything but the truth. Because the truth was harder to explain. I didn't know where my wife was. And part of me was terrified she was gone forever. But another part was terrified she wasn't. 2 weeks after she left, I received a postcard. No return address. Just a Japanese temple on the front. Soft ink lines of Kyoto's Kiyomizadera under falling cherry blossoms. On the back, in her unmistakable handwriting. The moonlight here reminds me of our first night. I hope you're taking care of the plants. And no apology. No clue. Just that. I carried that postcard in my wallet for a year. Read it 100 times. And every time, I asked myself the same question. Did she leave me? Or did she disappear into a life she always wanted and I never saw? Everyone talks about heartbreak like it's one loud, dramatic exit. But the worst kind is the one that's quiet. The one where they're still alive somewhere in the world. They just no longer want you in it. Grief is a shapeshifter. It can lie still for months, then suddenly return wearing a stranger's face, smelling like salt and sun, whispering that maybe, just maybe, the past isn't finished with you yet. 3 weeks after Kabir's phone call, I booked a flight to Hawaii. He didn't ask why, and I didn't tell him that something inside me had twisted the moment he said, "I think I saw Nara here, with a man." I told myself it was just coincidence. I told myself it couldn't be her. But we both knew I wasn't flying 3,000 miles for the view. Kabir's hotel sat on a cliffside above the north shore of Oahu, all warm wood, open glass and ocean air. He met me at the entrance, wearing his usual white linen shirt and sandals, his hair longer, his beard grayer. "You look like you haven't slept in months," he said, slapping my shoulder. I gave a hollow smile. "That's because I haven't." The first night, I stayed quiet. I walked the beach, ate dinner alone, sat on the porch and watched the moon rise over water that looked like molten silver. I kept thinking about the last time I saw Nara dancing barefoot on sand, holding her skirt with both hands, spinning under the stars like time had no power over her. That version of her felt like someone else's dream now. The next morning, Kabir joined me for coffee. "She stayed here, you know," he said. My breath caught. "Oh." He gave me a look. "I didn't realize it was her at first," he said. "She used a different name, Nara Kapoor. But the laugh was the same. The way she touched the books in the lobby. Always barefoot. Always lost in thought." I stared at him. "When?" "Maybe 6 months ago. She came with a guy. Quiet. Soft-spoken. Seemed more like a friend than a partner, if I'm honest. But they were close." "Did she see you?" "I think she recognized me," he said. "But she didn't say anything. Just smiled. Checked out the next morning. Left a sketchbook in room 309. Something clenched in my chest. "Do you still have it?" He nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure if I should show you." "Why not?" "Because she didn't want to be found." That afternoon, he handed me a small leather-bound book. The cover was worn, the corners bent. The kind of notebook Nara always carried. Inside were sketches, some rough, some hauntingly detailed. A tree with no leaves and birds flying away. A man sitting alone on a bench, hunched over, faceless. A woman wrapped in a shawl, standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the ocean. And then a drawing of me, or what used to be me, wearing my wedding ring, holding a cup of coffee, staring out a window. There were words beneath it, scribbled faintly in pencil. "He looks for me in the places I used to be, but never in the reasons I left." I closed the sketchbook, my hands trembling. She had been here. She had drawn me from memory. She had watched me forget how to love her, and left before she forgot how to love me back. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the beach again. But the waves weren't peaceful. They were loud, accusing. They sounded like her voice when she was finally brave enough to tell me what I never wanted to hear. And for the first time since she disappeared, I started to wonder if losing her was never the tragedy. Maybe the real tragedy was how long I didn't notice she was already gone. The first time I walked into room 309, the air felt unfinished, like someone had exhaled but never breathed back in. It had been cleaned already, the linens were crisp, the windows polished, the lavender scent of air freshener trying to erase something older. But I could still feel her here. Not just in the sketchbook my brother had handed me. In the energy. In the stillness. In the way the light hit the corner of the balcony. Soft, indirect, like a memory trying not to blind me. Nara had stayed here. In this very room. With someone else. But there was no sign of two people. Only hers. I sat on the edge of the bed, flipping slowly through the sketchbook again. Searching for a reason. Not a clue. Not a lead. A reason. Each page told a story I'd missed while we were married. A tree hollowed by termites, yet still blooming at the top. A woman walking into the ocean fully clothed. A pattern of sharp black lines breaking into blue waves. She had been unraveling in front of me. and I had mistaken it for strength. And then I found it, folded into the last page, like something meant to be forgotten, a letter, unsealed, unaddressed, half-written. But I recognized the ink, the slant of her Ts, the sharp edges of her Ys. Armin, if you're reading this, I guess you came looking. Or maybe this sketchbook was always meant to find you. I didn't leave to punish you. I didn't run away. I left because I couldn't hear my own voice anymore. And you were the loudest silence I'd ever known. I thought space would save us. That maybe if I shrunk far enough away, you'd finally see me clearly. But maybe distance just makes ghosts of the living. I still love you. I never stopped. But I had to learn how to love myself louder. And I folded the letter back into the book, hands shaking. What do you do with a truth that doesn't want to stay buried? What do you do when the love you lost never truly left? It just changed its shape. I stood up and opened the closet, not knowing what I was looking for. And there it was, behind the extra blanket, folded, pressed. Her scarf, the indigo one with the gold-threaded edges. The one she wore on our first trip to Istanbul. The one that made her feel like a storm wrapped in silk. I held it to my face and breathed in. Faint. Faded. But her. I left the room that day with the sketchbook under one arm and the scarf in my pocket. But I also left with something else. A question that had no clean answer. If she was still out there, did she want to be found? Back in my room, I stared at the ocean for hours. The waves kept crashing. Relentless. Grieving. And I realized something cruel and freeing all at once. She had never belonged to me, only to herself. Maybe the only way to love her now was to finally stop chasing the ghost of who she used to be. The next morning, I found Kabir on the back porch, sipping his second espresso. He didn't look surprised when I asked, who was the man with her? He tilted his head. You're sure you want to know? No, I said. But I need to. He set the cup down and exhaled through his nose like he was bracing for impact. His name's Vihan. They weren't together like that. I talked to him. My chest tightened. You talked to him? Kabir nodded slowly. The second night they were here. She wasn't feeling well, so he came down for tea. Said she had been going through something serious. I didn't blink. What kind of serious? Kabir looked at me. Armin. Nara was sick. The words didn't make sense at first. My mind tried to protect me, twisting, doubting, unraveling possibilities. What do you mean sick? He hesitated. She was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition last year. Something rare. Progressive. I don't know the name. She didn't share much. But she was here trying a holistic treatment center on the island. My knees buckled. I sat down slowly. I thought. My voice cracked. I thought she left because she didn't love me anymore. She did, Kabir said gently. That's the tragedy. Nara hadn't left to escape me. She left to spare me. She was trying to find peace. Her way. On her terms. Vihan wasn't her lover. He was her doctor. Or maybe her friend. Maybe both. She had let everyone else believe a different story. Because for her, the truth was heavier than betrayal. And I hadn't just lost her. I had never really fought to keep her. That night, I returned to room 309 one last time. I lit the candle by the window, unfolded her scarf, read her letter again, and I whispered the words I should have said years ago. I'm sorry I didn't see you. 2 days before I flew back to Oregon, Kabir handed me a second envelope. She left this behind. For you. Said if you ever came, I should give it to you only after you read the sketchbook. It was thick. Folded letters. 5 of them. I read them slowly, one by one. Each was dated, spanning nearly a year after she left. Each letter was a map of her inner world. Her struggle with the diagnosis. Her late-night regrets. The dreams she had about me, where we were dancing barefoot on a rooftop or arguing over soup. The moments she almost called. The apology she couldn't bring herself to send. I watched you through a hotel window once. You were standing in the garden, staring at the ocean. And I wondered, if I walked up and said hi, would you still know how to hold me? Sometimes I wanted you to chase me, but I also didn't want to be caught. I left because I was afraid of what love looks like when the body starts to fail. I wanted you to remember me whole. I still dream of you, but in the dreams, we're not sad anymore. I finished the last letter just before sunrise, and I cried, not for the woman I lost, but for the version of myself that might have loved her better. On my last morning in Hawaii, I walked alone to the cliff edge near the hotel. The wind was soft. The sky bled pink and gold. The waves below hummed with the rhythm of forever. I took the scarf from my pocket, folded it neatly, placed it on the rocks, and I whispered a goodbye she would never hear, but maybe somehow would still feel. I let you go now, Nara. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I finally understand why you had to leave. I didn't fly back to the life I left. I started a new one. Different city. No plans. No 5-year spreadsheets. Just morning walks. Small meals. Painting classes I never used to make time for. I even adopted a dog. And sometimes when the wind moves a certain way, or I smell eucalyptus and jasmine, I remember her. Not with ache, but with gratitude. She taught me what silence can destroy, and what love sometimes has to become when letting go is the only way forward. My brother called me last week. Same tone, same island breeze in his voice. "Where is your wife?" he asked, teasing. I smiled this time. She's a pause. She's somewhere peaceful,